Welcome again. My name is John Matheson, and I'll be the lead facilitator today. As is the custom in such things, and if we can just go to the next slide, we always begin with a land acknowledgement, because even though we're meeting in a virtual context, the spirit of the acknowledgement remains just as important as ever. So today we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, which includes the Ojibwa, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. And we respect the longstanding relationships with First Nations people in this place, in the 100-mile Windsor-Essex Peninsula and the Straits des Trois of Detroit. So thank you for joining us in that spirit. If we can just jump to the next slide, we'll just play a quick video greeting from 3 of the project leaders, and then we'll jump right in.
On behalf of all of us at the Windsor-Essex Regional Community Safety and Wellbeing Systems Leadership Table, we want to thank you for your interest in the development of our region's first ever Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Together, our goal is to build a community where everyone feels safe, has a sense of belonging, has access to services and opportunities, and can have their needs met across the region.
We want to hear from you. We want to understand what your priorities and concerns are for the safety and well-being of our community, so that we can create a plan to advance the interests of all residents across Windsor and the County of Essex. So please make your voice heard by participating in our online survey,
or by registering for one of the virtual public meetings happening in each of the region's 8 municipalities. To get involved, visit us online at CSWBWindsor-Essex.ca. And thank you from all of us.
So that is sort of the classic, a word from our sponsors, and in person, I guess we'd want to say thank you too, because really this morning what we're going to do is have a brief amount of introduction, but then it's all about you and hearing from you. Now, in order to make that go a little bit easier, I know we're getting into a year of familiarity with online meetings, but we'll just have a couple of opening comments about housekeeping matters. Do remember to try and mute yourself unless you're actually speaking. And of course, you can do that either by using the mute button that you'll find when you scroll your cursor down to the left bottom of your screen. You can also mute yourself from your computer or phone as well, depending on how you're using things. We will mute you if you're having some noise in the background that you would probably prefer us to shut down anyway. But we will also unmute you just as swiftly to make sure that you have an opportunity to participate. So we'll be partners in keeping the noise down to a minimum. And of course, unmute yourself whenever you'd like to speak. Now, we're going to be going into breakout groups, and we've got a very manageable group of people today. So I think you'll find that we're not going to have to be particularly formal in making it known that you'd like to say something. You can certainly use the chat box, but we'd also be delighted to hear from you just verbally. So like you can either use the little raise hand feature that you see in your reactions section at the bottom, but going like this works too, or just saying, hey, John, there's a point I'd like to make. So there's lots, I think you'll find it'll be very comfortable when we do get to the chatting portion. I should just say that, this is a community safety and well-being plan, and community safety and well-being start here and now, not sometime distant in the future. So we will be monitoring the discussion and reserve the right to delete any comments or remove any participants that are making inappropriate comments in a way that would threaten the safe space for other people to participate. But, I say that just for the record, and that certainly hasn't happened yet in any of our consultations, and we wouldn't expect it to. Anybody who's giving their Saturday morning to be helpful and participate in the community, we know you're here in a good spirit, and we look forward to hearing everything you have to say. I should also just say that we have closed captioning services this morning, and if you do require that, please let us know, and you can enable them at the bottom of your screen by pressing the little CC button that looks pretty much exactly like it would on your TV at home. Also, if you have any technical issues, please just send a chat message to Lindsay Rive, or just let us know, and Lindsay and you can solve it offline, but she's a whiz on dealing with such things. That's probably it for the housekeeping. If we can just jump to the next page, I can just give you a quick rundown on the specifics of the agenda. And it's a pretty simple one. Once we're done with the introductions, there'll be a bit of background about the community safety and well-being planning process, and a little bit of background on the town of Tecumseh that arises out of the current state report that we did. And then we're going to move right into breakout sessions to hear what you have to say about your perceptions of safety and well-being in the community. And we'll basically take the time to go through a series of questions that we have set out in the workbook, and then we'll come back and have a report back in group discussion. So the majority of the time, hopefully, will be spent hearing from you and not listening to us. But one person who you really are going to want to listen to is Leo Gill. And if we can just jump to the next slide, you can do just a couple of the introductions. Leo Gill is the project manager, and he's going to be taking you through some introductory comments on the process so far and how it's all working. I don't think we have Stephen Lynn here today, but we have Michelle and we have Lindsay. And then from the Strategy Corp team, I already said I'm John Matheson, and please excuse the lack of truth in advertising in relation to my haircut. There's been at least one impact of COVID-19 that you can see here live and in person. But there's also Brian Teefy and Olivia Lahi, who's here from our team as well. But without any further ado, why don't I introduce you to Leo. Leo's been the project manager on this for a year and is basically giving everything to figuring out how to come up with a process that'll be really meaningful and bind these various Windsor-Essex communities together in something that'll drive some really important results for the community. So Leo, why don't you tell people a bit about the project, and we can keep things moving.
Thank you very much for the introduction, John. And yes, and thank you all for joining us here today on a Saturday morning. We really do appreciate your time. To start off, I do like kind of answering the question, what is community safety and well-being planning? And really the best way to explain it is that community safety and well-being planning is about creating a collaborative approach to service delivery, one that involves multiple sectors and community partners and is focused on being proactive and preventative. And really all of this is for the goal of addressing local priorities related to crime and complex social issues. To do this, municipal and regional leaders are working together with partners across several fields with the goal of creating a community where everyone feels safe, has a sense of belonging, has access to services and opportunities, and can have their needs met. Why it's important for us to kind of understand the goals of that, as well as the approach itself, is that it's really recognizing that there are factors that influence our feelings of safety and well-being that go beyond whether a crime has occurred. It can be things like stigma, discrimination, even a lack of access to resources. And also the approach recognizes that for every risk a community may have, there is a community strength and an asset. And that should be really our starting blocks, our building blocks. And finally, that everyone has a role to play in improving our safety and well-being. So you may ask, why now? Why are we undertaking this project? And really over the past 2 decades, provincial data and research focusing on how to address some of today's complex social issues have really highlighted the importance of crime prevention or prevention, strengthening communities, and involving different sectors in the solution-making process. And based on this research, in 2018, the provincial government passed legislation that required all municipalities to prepare and adopt a community safety and well-being plan. But really, beyond just it being legislated, there's actually a lot of great local benefits to creating this type of collaboration and work towards improving well-being within our communities. If we go to the next slide. Oh, Lindsay, next slide, please. Okay, great. And so one of the pieces here is that really when we're thinking of how can we actually intervene on some of these challenges, we have a framework, a planning framework that identifies 4 areas of intervention. At the top is social development, followed by prevention, risk intervention, and then incident response, and the bullseye of those concentric circles there. And commonly when we think of safety interventions, we tend to focus on the center of the bullseye at the incident itself. And again, tend to approach it from a policing or emergency services perspective. But research is showing that first responders are being called to situations that are related to symptoms of larger issues. So related to well-being, but also that are symptoms of larger issues like a mental health crisis or housing insecurity. And these are issues that first responders can't solve alone. And so partnership is really important to be able to tackle some of these challenges. If we move a layer up to risk intervention, this layer really is focusing on reducing harm before it gets to the point of an incident. This type of work is not usually about creating community-wide strategies, and instead is focused on providing wraparound services to particular individuals in need. The next layer, prevention, is about proactively identifying and addressing local risks before they escalate. And this is where, again, all community members, groups, and sectors have a role to play. And finally, at the top is social development. And this layer is usually involving longer term investments or strategies to improve larger scale issues like access to income, education, or quality housing, just to name a few. And work in this layer is involving really us looking beyond the incident at the social causes and understanding that those causes need integrated and collective responses. So to pull these concepts together, if we were to, instead of starting at the incident response level, if we started at the social development layer, then we can work to build on protective factors and strengths, emphasize prevention and risk mitigation strategies through the use of data, and ultimately work to reduce the number of incidents we need to respond to by intervening before challenges become crises. And a way for us to do that is really the approach that we're taking today. And if we go into the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the Windsor-Essex approach. Because now that we have that bit of a background, it may make a bit more sense now with how we're tackling this. And so the plan is being developed in a joint city-county approach. And while it is being developed through regional collaboration, the plan will include different appendices for each municipality. So have data profiles for each municipality within a region. And really the intent here is to ensure that local priorities in each municipality are identified and understood. And again, I think something that we all know is some challenges may be different that we may be experiencing in Tecumseh versus Lakeshore versus Windsor or Leamington. And so it's important for us to recognize that there may not be one solution for all of those different challenges. It also doesn't mean that those challenges within those municipalities are greater or less than, they're just different. So it's important for us to have a good understanding of what those issues may be. And also what strengths are available within the communities that we can then pair to deal with those challenges. So guiding the plan development are two teams here, the Regional Community Safety and Wellbeing Systems Leadership Table and the Enhanced Sector Network. The Systems Leadership Table is made up of leaders from across multiple sectors like health, mental health, education, community and social services, and law enforcement, as an example. And the Enhanced Sector Network really consists of frontline staff and members from community organizations and committees that work alongside 8 historically underrepresented communities. These communities include First Nations and Indigenous peoples, racialized persons, newcomers, youth, seniors, 2S LGBTQ folk, accessibility communities, and broader community groups that are usually working alongside individuals who may have lived experience of homelessness or lived experience of substance use. And all they're doing in terms of how they're helping us out is what we're really doing is trying to narrow down the focus of some of the strategic priorities, as well as make sure that we identify priority risk factors for our communities, identify strategies to reduce those risk factors, and then set measurable outcomes to make sure that we can gauge our progress. Next slide, please. So overall, what these plans are hoping to achieve is really to take advantage of the existing community strengths, resources, and best practices to create proactive approaches to address identified local risks. And these plans really benefit in a number of different ways, including increasing our communication across different agencies or organizations, and also increase our understanding of local risks and vulnerable user groups. Ensuring that services are provided to individuals with complex needs is another approach, as well as increasing awareness and coordination and access to services for community members and vulnerable groups. Next slide, please. So as with everything, due to COVID, there was a bit of a pause on the project, but we relaunched in June 2020. And since the relaunch, we've been able to develop a current state data report and an interactive map, both interactive asset map, both of which will be made public in the coming weeks. Also, we were able to complete presentations informing elected officials from each municipal council about the project and our progress thus far. And through our enhanced sector network, we've actually been able to engage 96 different frontline staff and representatives from existing committees and organizations to help us with understanding and contextualizing some of the data. And really, once we've completed our public consultation and have been able to analyze the data, we'll really be developing a final report and submitting it to municipal and county councils for adoption. We expect the plan to be fully completed by and made public by the end of the year. So next slide. If there's any questions, I'm open to answer any questions about the process so far or about the project in general.
No questions, Leo.
I have one.
Okay, great.
I've just sent a message, but I don't know how it's responded to. Are we able to see these slides after the presentation, and how and where do we see them?
So that's a great question. We will be having these, since these meetings are recorded, we're going to be ensuring that we upload this first presentation part onto our website at cswbwindsor-essex.ca, as well as, I believe it has to go through YouTube first to then be able to have that link. So it'll be available on both sites. In terms of a timeline for that, I believe that we will be having something available by the end of next week, so that you may be able to review the presentation.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Mr. Gill, where does the community survey fit in with the plan?
So great. So actually, Olivia will be talking a little bit about the current state data report, some of the inputs that we're using. But the way that we're approaching this is, you know, if to paint the most accurate picture, we're trying to get information from as many different means as possible. One such means is the survey. It paints one part of the picture. These virtual town halls allow us to gain another part of that picture. The current state data report gives us historical information, a bit of information about what the community has been facing over periods of time and different trends. So that gives us another part of the picture. So again, if we combine those in addition to the consultations that we're doing with the enhanced sector network groups, we get a more fuller picture, a more well-rounded approach to understanding some of the local priorities.
Thank you.
No problem. And I think with that, what we can do is move on to actually talking about the current state data report. So that was a good segue. Thank you for that, Bob. So Olivia, you're up.
Hi, everyone. As Leo said, my name's Olivia. Jumping into our current state report, we did do a current state report to look at kind of historical trends and look at the current state of all the different municipalities in the region and try to make these little municipal profiles that would give us a by the numbers approach. As Leo said, it's just one image of many that we try to establish on what's going on in the different municipalities. The point of the current state report is basically to create a baseline that helps us assess safety and well-being in our communities and look for points of improvement in the future. We use a lot of different data sets for these reports, including data sets from the municipality, including housing and financial services data, as well as police services data on things like crime statistics and Statistics Canada, as well as other provincial indicators like the QAO and some others like that. You can see at the bottom, there's a broad range of categories that we looked into: crime and victimization, education, financial security, mental health and substance use, physical health, housing and neighborhoods, and COVID-19, which does kind of impact all the other categories as well. And the idea here is to show you the range of factors that impact safety and well-being, and the idea that we're not just looking at instances of crime, we're also looking at the underlying causes of that crime and illegal behavior in general. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have created municipal profiles as part of this process. And what we have is a slide that kind of covers what we have so far on Tecumseh. And as we said, this is one side of it. It's a very by the numbers approach. Some of the data is from things like StatsCan. So we acknowledge that that's, you know, in a census year, it can be a challenge to find up-to-date information. So we are looking at 2016 data. But the point here is to take a snapshot and to look at some trends and acknowledge that, you know, we have to look at all the data and contextually and understand that you have to dig a little deeper to find out what it actually means. So with that, we can take a look at what we have for Tecumseh. Next slide, please. So given you guys are right next to Windsor, you got quite a bit more density than a lot of the other municipalities in the region, and it's kind of a unique thing about Tecumseh in the region. The town has generally less severe crime, although it does have higher rates of property crime than regional averages. Educational attainment has been right about on par or above since as of 2016. And residents in the town have a higher median income than regional averages. However, and child poverty is below regional averages, but it has been increasing as of 2016. The town strategic plan does touch on a number of things that address community safety and well-being. The mission of the town is sustainable growth that integrates the principles of health and wellness in everything it does. So we pulled out a couple of the notable priorities for you here, including promoting smart, sustainable economic development and an affordable housing supply to support it, investing in sustainable infrastructure by ensuring growth pays for growth, protecting the town from the effects of climate change, and creating accessible and inclusive facilities and programs. And lastly, promoting community health and wellness with an emphasis on physical leisure activities. And as I said, this is not an inclusive list of all the town's priorities, but we pulled out a couple that specifically have to do with community safety and well-being. With that said, that's a little snapshot of Tecumseh and something we want to give you guys right before we dive into our breakout rooms. So if we go to the next slide. We've randomly assigned you guys into breakout rooms. This is just a nice way for us to get into smaller groups and gives everyone a bit more of an opportunity to share their thoughts. As we said, the main point of this consultation is to hear your voice. It's to hear that context. It's so that you can really provide us with the level of detail that we want from the public, and really add color to these pretty analytical and number focused stats that we've just showed you. So I think John and I will be leading these groups, so we'll be split up automatically. Zoom will send you a little notification that says, please join. I think they'll last 30 to 45 minutes, and the hosts, we're there to make sure that not only everybody gets heard, but also that we get through all the questions. So we're there to guide you through the discussion questions and hopefully make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. And then after the activity will be automatically brought back into the main group, and we'll go over some of the answers we had so that everybody can hear what the groups were discussing. Couple reminders, in these smaller groups, generally we don't need to use raise hand and comment. If you'd like to, you're absolutely welcome to. But in the smaller groups, it's much more easy to have a kind of open dialogue, but you will still need to remember to unmute yourself. So certainly do that. And as always, we'll be monitoring the chat. So with that, I think I'll let Lindsay divide everyone into their groups, and I will see you on the other side, as they say.
All right, I'm opening all rooms now, so just hit the link or the button to join your breakout room.